Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Bob's Woodshop. We've been making peppermills over at the New Jersey School of Woodwork lately, and I'm really liking this particular design. This one's a piece of spalted maple, really came out nice, and we also did one out of box elder, and I'm going to show you how we made this today. The way I make these is a little bit different than the other videos I've seen on YouTube. I've got maybe like a 10% difference from what I've seen on the other videos, so stay tuned. So just for rough dimensions, this piece is 7 3/4, and the top is 2 1/4, and it's roughly 2 3/8 wide and 2 1/4 wide this way. This is pretty much of a sphere. So first of all, let's talk about what we need for the project. So the drill bits you need, per the instructions, you need a 1 1/16 bit for the center hole, and that's not a critical dimension. You can get away with a 1-inch bit. You don't have to go buy a 1 1/16 if you don't want to. This is a 1 9/16 inch bit, and that's what holds the mechanism inside. This is a critical dimension. If you use 1 9/16, it'll fit just right. 1 9/16 is 1/16 bigger than 1 1/2 and 1/16 smaller than 1 5/8. So I recommend you do buy that particular bit. Then the instructions recommend that you use a 1 5/8 inch bit. This one is a 1 3/4. If you don't have those two bits, it's really not a big deal, because you could always just drill this initial hole and just make this wider hole a little bit bigger with a bidan or a skew chisel. Okay. The other things I recommend using is one of these things from Robert Sorby. It's for these crush grind mechanisms. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's good to have. The reason being, there's a lot of pressure on this shaft. When you pull this out, there's typically a lot of pressure pushing it in or out. What I did on this one, I actually sanded the end of the shaft here so it doesn't have so much pressure. If you don't sand that shaft, it takes a lot to get it out. Oops, there's some of the pepper coming out. So you put a lot of pressure because of the way the mechanism is designed, and that's why I like using this grooving tool, which we'll get into later. The other thing you're going to need is a nice piece of wood. I do happen to have a piece of box elder. This piece came out of the same piece of wood this is. So I have one of these left, and we're going to go ahead and start getting this prepared to put on the lathe. So I'm really going to I'm going to find the center, and I'm going to start roughing this out. So let's just find the center. And we'll do this on both ends. This is a nice solid piece of wood. I really like doing this. A lot of times this spalted maple might have a void in it. I hope I don't find any voids, but it seems like a nice dense piece of wood. What I'm going to do is chuck this up, get this centered. Okay, then we can start turning. Let's see. Cut. Yep. Okay, so we got it between centers, drive center, live center. We're turning, so take off your watch, any rings that you've got, and we're just going to start roughing this out. Starting at about 500 RPM. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to take this down to 2.5 inches. But I need to put a tenon here. I need a tenon on this side. And we're going to split it right there. Oh, no. We're going to split it here, a tenon here, a tenon here, and a tenon here. And a tenon right there. And we're going to use a parting tool to make the tenons. So obviously this is going to be the head, and that's the body. Make that groove a little bit deeper, but give yourself enough room here to have a nice tenon for your chuck. And fit these for the individual chuck that you have. When you're using a parting tool, make that kerf a little bit wider than the parting tool is so it doesn't pinch on the sides. So it started to get a little bit unstable. So that's about a 1/2 inch thick right now. So I'm just going to cut this off with a Japanese knife. This is the head. This is the base. Okay, so if you get this confused, this is the part that we're going to drill into. Okay, whenever you make a tenon like this to turn a small object like this, just make sure the tenon is shorter than the length of the jaws. Otherwise, it's very unstable, and when you start putting pressure on it, this could pop out. So don't let the wood touch the face of the jaws. I like tightening up on both sides. Ooh, tight, nice and tight. Okay, so that's turning concentric. And now we can start shaping this. Keep the workspace clear so you're not getting off balance, and that's the amount of shavings we did we took that from a 3.5 to a 2.5 inch block, and that's how much shavings we got. Hey, I forgot to tell you, the hole for the top section is really 15/16. So you do need a 15/16 inch bit, and that's another critical dimension. The other critical dimension is the 1 9/16 that goes down here. It's not critical here. This could be 1 inch or 1 1/16. But here it shows 1 inch on this particular design. Okay, but what we're going to do now is start shaping the head, and we're going to drill that 15/16 hole. Okay, so about 2.5 here. So I want to basically make a circle. So I'm going to mark this like that. And we're going to make a part here. We're going to come about halfway here, and we're going to start rounding this out. So I'm going to part here and then start shaping the head. Again, if you're using a parting tool, give yourself a little bit of width here so that the tool doesn't bend. And then start shaping the head. I'm basically trying to make a circle. So this is standard bead cutting from this point. And rub the bevel, raise the handle, twist. On this side.
Hey Pete, wait here.
Before I go any further, I want to drill a 15/16 hole in here. So this is the 15/16 inch bit, and we're supposed to drill a hole 1.25 inches deep, which I marked with a magic marker there. When you drill slow, around 500 or 600. Okay, so that's going to fit nice and tight in there. And we are going to cut a little groove in there for these fingers. Now, some people say you don't need that groove. I prefer to put the groove because of the pressure that's applied when you're opening and closing or taking the head off. So I'm going to put a groove in, plus I'm going to epoxy it in to make it super strong, especially if the wood is starting to move. We wouldn't want this spinning around in here, so I prefer the belt and suspenders approach of having both the groove and epoxy. So the tool has a little line on here for the part that goes in the top here. And we're just going to put this in, turn the lathe on, I'm going to crank it up to about 900 or 1,000 and cut a little groove. You want that little groove in there. Now, I don't really want to put this in here because it's going to be hard to get that out later on because that's going to lock in there. So we're going to put this in at the very end. So now we're just going to go ahead and finish shaping the head. So we're going to do this until we get a shape that we like. So I'm going to sneak up on it with my carbide tool. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is reverse chuck this and put it in a expanding smaller chuck in order to knock this off. Okay, so that's what it looks like from here. And then we're going to put a smaller chuck on and put it in expansion mode. Okay, so I got a little Penn State Industry micro chuck here. And this is a 1 1/4 inch spindle, so I have to use this reducer. And then we're just going to go ahead and chuck up the piece. Don't want to put a ton of pressure on here because I don't want to break the piece of wood because it's kind of thin down there. So this is a really good way to do this. And now I just have to finish rounding the top of this. So I'm switching to a smaller spindle gouge. Take a nice light cut. I'm going to check the shape, see if I like that, and I do. It's got to be pleasing to your eye and your hand. Let's see how it looks. Very nice. And I like the shape of that. It's beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and sand it. I'm going to spare you the sanding portion because no one wants to see anybody sand. Okay, so we went through the grits and I took it up to 600. If you wanted to apply your finish now, like a Mylan's friction polish and triple E, something like that, you could. I prefer to wait till the very end. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to spray shellac and then lacquer and then buff it. And when I shellac and lacquer and buff, I get this beautiful finish. This is high gloss. And I could probably get something close to that with Mylan's, but I think this is a better finish. Now we're going to do the body. And if you remember, this was the top where the head was going to match. And if you forget, that's where we cut it with a saw. And that's where the live center was. So we're going to put it in like this and tighten it up. And what we're doing now is preparing for the drilling operation. You want to make sure this is nice and tight. When using the chuck, I always tighten on both sides, give it a really nice snug fit. And I'm happy with that. Let's see. Make sure that's nice and tight and running concentric. There we go. I didn't get that quite perfectly round, so we're going to go with that. I drilled a little deeper because I want to leave that tenon on there, and that tenon's going to come off. So right now I'm in there about 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8. Okay. Now I want to drill the 1 9/16 hole for the shaft mechanism. So this is a 1 9/16, not 1 1/2, not 1 5/8, 1 9/16, and that's a critical dimension. The depth of the 1 9/16 has to be 2 inches. That dimension right there. Okay. Got this marked out at 2 inches, and I'm actually going to go a little bit further. If this is too deep or deeper than 2 inches, it's not going to hurt anything. Ready? We're going to drill from both sides. It's at 8 inches tall now. And to get to halfway, we're going to be right about there. And this is the 1 1/16 bit. This is not a critical dimension. If this is 1 inch, that's fine. You don't really have to go out and buy yourself a 1 1/16 non-standard bit. So we're going to drill through that now. Ready? Okay, so now we're going to drill in from the other end. I've already reverse chucked that. So I'm purposely taking very light cuts here because I don't want to knock this thing off the chuck. Okay, so now we're going to drill in from the other end. I've already reversed chucked that. So I'm purposely taking very light cuts here because I don't want to knock this thing off the chuck. Okay, Okay, so that's that little bit of a cove, that very shallow cove there, so that it fits like that. Okay, so what's important is this part, that big flange there, fits inside there, which it does. That fits in that 1 1/16 hole. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up the live center again, and I'm going to finish shaping this to what's something that's pleasing to both my hand and my eyes. So you just have to be careful. You just have to be careful that you don't go too deep in here. So the hole that we drilled is 1 1/16, and that obviously has to stay wider, maybe about 1.5 inches. Okay, if you look in there, one thing I forgot to do again is put the groove in here to match this. Now there's different opinions that I've seen on other videos where these don't really even count. These are really meant for Peppermills that are made out of metal. My preference is to have that groove in there, but I have made a couple of these and I keep forgetting to put that groove in. But what I've been doing is just putting a lot of epoxy here and on these little ribs, and that holds it in nice and tight. So that'll go in there like that. I'm going to have to measure for the length. This is sticking out, and then this will go inside there. So I made a mark there for 1 1/8 inches, and that'll fit inside the top. So I'm using a metal working vise in order to cut the length. Don't try this on a woodworking vise. I'm going to take a file and just round this off. You'd also do it on a disc sander. I'm going to use a file. Okay, so for assembly, I'm going to, well, once I put the finish on it, I'm going to put a lot of epoxy on here, on these ribs, and on this little snap tab. I will insert it into there. I don't want to glue this in yet because I want to put the finish on this, but I would insert that on there with epoxy and then assemble the whole thing. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like prior to finish. Came out very nice. I like that a lot, and hope you're enjoying this video so far. Let's get on to the finishing process. So now I'm going to buff it. I'm going to start with the Triple E. This is the Beal buffing system, and I'm going to go through and start the process. This is going to bring up a very nice polished look. I'm not going to go through the entire process with you now, just give you an idea of what this is looking like. The next part of the Beal buffing system is the white diamond and then carnauba wax. So I'll be back to you as soon as I'm done this, and we'll go ahead and glue the parts in. Okay, I'm all buffed up. It looks gorgeous. This wood is really pretty. Plus, I really like the shape of this. I think this is a kind of a nice, sexy, flowing lines. There's no lumps or bumps or anything. It just gracefully slides up the side of it. I want to put a little JB Weld on my paper plate here. I think this is really good. I just got this over at Home Depot. This stuff's getting expensive. It's $22 for this. All right, this should be plenty. Okay. So if you remember, I did put the little groove with this tool in here. And that's why I haven't inserted this before. So I want to put it on these ribs. And this, again, this was a 15/16 hole. And this should just snap in place now. Like that. Oh, need some paper towel. Okay, now if you remember this tool, you can put a groove for these tabs also. And quite honestly, I forgot to do that again. And that was the third time I forgot to put it in for these little tabs here. But it's been working out anyway without the tabs. And some of the folks on YouTube say it's really not necessary. But I'm going to go ahead and glob this on. And then once this is inserted, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry for 24 hours. Because if you try to put this together within an hour or so, it's not going to stick. This is 5-minute epoxy, but it takes 24 hours to cure. Okay, so it looks like that. I'll let that cure. And since that's extending past the tabletop, I have a hole right there for other functionality. And I'm going to let that dry overnight. So we'll test it out in the morning. Stay tuned, you're almost done this video. Hey, and if you haven't yet already subscribe, let me know. And hit that subscribe button. Okay, here's how it came out. It's all buffed up, ready to go. My wife made me a beautiful salad. Seems to be working just fine. And yeah, great project. Like I said, I love the lines on this. It's just a nice, smooth, flowing line. One thing I would suggest on these Peppermills, they suggest on the instructions to make this extension about 1 1/8 inches, which puts it all the way to the top of this top piece. But when you do that, it's really hard to pull it off, and then you have to really push it on hard to get there. So I only extended it about 1 inch. And that's all you really need. And you can still pick it up from the head like that without like just being a He-Man to really pull this thing off. But other than that, hey, great project. And, you know, thanks for tuning in today, and I really appreciate your time. And, hey, don't forget that like and subscribe buttons. See you on the next one.